Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Ah! Hello, good morning and welcome to the second day of Youth PACT 2022. My name is Mutakin. I am the Program Director and Lecturer from Taylor's College and I will be your MC for today. Today, we have two sessions in total. The first session will be on youth mentorship, disrupting the status quo. The second session will be a workshop on measuring the impact of your social justice advocacy campaign. For your info, Youth PACT 2022 is a jointly organized with Taylor's College and MIDP and brought to you by the Risers community. The Risers community is a growing force of awesome that begins with you. Bridging secondary school students to college, it is a platform to engage with like-minded peers, equip yourself with fresh skills, and empower each other to make things happen. You can join and be a Risers today. If you are interested to find out more, check out this video.
What have you posted recently on the Risers app?
I posted this awesome socializing tips post to help people remember names better.
Wow, that's a great insight for the student.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Hey guys, I have something I want to show you.
What's it about?
It's, I don't know, maybe a video about us.
No really. What's it about?
I've already said, no, it's a video about us.
I know that video.
Hey.
Hey guys, what are you doing?
Can we join? Yes.
Come on.
Come on, grab a seat.
Right, let me log in. Wait. I took a really long time to make this, right? So I hope it's good.
Whoa,
Okay.
alright.
You guys ready?
Yes.
In
Definitely.
3, 2, 1. It can be stressful being in school and planning your future career. All of this can be overwhelming. We know, and you're not alone.
This is why we've established
Recording in progress.
to help secondary school students like you navigate through their many unanswered questions, providing support and help to prepare them for their college experience and beyond.
From hosting more than 700 secondary school students at our Taylor's Future movement to offering a total of 22 exciting and engaging workshops, we want to help equip and empower you to have the best college experience.
To keep in touch and up to date with the latest from the Risers community, we launched the Risers app with an amazing live show. Plus, winners walked away with food vouchers, Risers t-shirts, and a Nintendo Switch Lite. Get connected, get updated on exciting events, learn about interesting topics, and stand a chance to win exciting prizes and merchandise just by interacting on the app.
While 2020 was a tough year for everyone, the Risers community decided to support the Ministry of Education's Kita Jaga Kita initiative by installing billboards, banners, and stickers at 40 secondary schools all across Malaysia to remind students to follow SOP and keep good hygiene.
We partnered with an online tuition platform to carry out online classes, giving out more than 1 million ringgit worth of scholarships to deserving students. Educational events and a series of online SPM workshops were organized to give students a boost right before the big day.
The Risers community is growing every day and we can't wait for you to be part of it too. Join us today for an amazing college experience. Right?
Wow, that was amazing. That was us.
You did all that as Risers?
That's right.
Whoa, you know what? This is really cool.
Can I join?
Good!
If you are a school student aged 16 to 17, you can be a Riser too.
That's right, Sham. Just go to the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and download the Risers app. Register and earn points to redeem awesome rewards.
Wow, it's really that simple. What are you waiting for then? Download the app now.
No, go!
Every Youth PACT session will also be translated into Bahasa Isyarat Malaysia live, so that the deaf community can also take part and contribute to the conversation. We have also enabled live caption for those of you who need. If you don't want to use the live caption function, you can turn it off at the bottom of the bar. I want to also recognize Madam Lucy Lim and Mr. Jonah Ong who are our BIM translator today. Lucy and Jonah, thank you so much for all the help. If any of you are also organizing events and forum, do reach out to these wonderful people to also make your conversation accessible. A little bit about the organizers. MIDP. MIDP is Malaysia's leading soft skill education institution. Founded back in 2010, they are motivated by the passion to improve soft skill literacy and accessibility in Malaysia through debating, public speaking, storytelling, poetry, drama, Model United Nations, and others. To date, MIDP have empowered more than 12,000 students and 1,200 education institutions across Malaysia. They are recognized as an expert on soft skill education by various stakeholders, including the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Talent Corp Malaysia, and many others. To learn more about what MIDP does, please enjoy this video featuring the kids at MIDP.
Are you guys ready for some questions? Why is eye contact very important? Yes.
Eye contact is very important because you know why? I give you an example. When you are talking to somebody, you look at the wall. It means that you are talking to the wall.
Why are hand gestures important?
To interact with the audience, so it makes them feel like they're connected with you.
Why is it important for people to feel connected?
Okay. It's important to feel connected with people because like if you're not feeling connected to the person will be like, I don't get what you're saying.
Alright, but why do you think emotions are important?
Emotions are very important because, so for example, if you are saying a story and you say it's supposed to be a sad story, but then you say like this. Once upon a time, there was a car accident, a 3-man died, one because he got killed by the wolf. People also like, why what's the speaker because they don't feel what you are talking about.
Actually, speaking of competitions, all of you are actually national champions or amazing finalists. But were you always this articulate and confident with yourself?
Well, I was not that brave at first, but but my mind kept on saying, just chill, and speak. So I did it with a positive mindset, and I did my story perfectly.
I was never this brave, and I'm still a little bit shy. But last time, before I joined MIDP, I was really shy and I wasn't very good at socializing. This one time when I was out with my friend and his father, we were lining up to go to a restaurant, and then we saw this kid playing some game. After me and my friends started talking about him, then my friend's father said, why don't you ask him what game he's playing? Then I said, but isn't that weird? Then his father said, no, it's good to socialize. So me and my friend went over to talk to that kid. It was going really well. Then after that, it started getting really awkward. Then the kid said, can you guys leave me alone?
So why did you all decide to join MIDP?
I joined MIDP because I want to further improving all my soft skills, interpersonal skills, and critical thinking skills. I know MIDP is the perfect place for me to unleash my talents, a place where I can learn and get better every day.
I joined MIDP because actually I wasn't interested in public speaking or anything like that. But then my parents said I talk a lot, so they asked me to join public speaking. But when I joined public speaking, it was actually really fun and not at all how I expected it. And then after a while, I actually started enjoying MIDP and started wanting to go there every day.
Oh, that's good. I joined MIDP because I want to enhance my soft skills. I enjoy socializing with people, so MIDP is definitely the best place for me to express my feelings, my thoughts, and share my ideas with like-minded friends.
Nice. I hope that you enjoyed the cute and sincere video by the kids at MIDP. Next, a little bit about Taylor's College. For 52 years, Taylor's College Lakeside campus has established itself as the best pre-university in Malaysia in academic excellence and track records for placing students into top universities of their choice. Taylor's College offers several programs, including Cambridge A-Level, which is CAL, South Australian Certificate of Education, which is SACE, we have foundations, diploma, and professional programs. Taylor's College also believes in developing the youth of today for a better tomorrow. As a lecturer in Taylor's, I can confidently tell you that we here in Taylor's really focuses on nurturing the mindset and character of our youthful students. That's why we have organized or get involved with many competition, workshop, and campaigns that can really benefit youth, such as Youth PACT 2022. For your information, Youth PACT 2022 aims to play a significant role to platform youth-led causes by connecting you to change makers with the right tools to devise innovation solutions and measure the impact of their campaigns. Now let's relax and watch this teaser video. Yeah?
Malaysia has amended the federal constitution to lower the voting age from 21 to 18.
Where do we stand as the youth of Malaysia?
Malaysia's education system has grown so segregated where many of our generation grew up without having the chance to interact and learn with those different from us.
They say that the youths are the future leaders, but I say youths are the current leaders.
Apakah kuasa anak muda dalam menentukan hala tuju negara?
I just want schools to be safe.
We envision a Malaysia where the youth are able to navigate differences and have the knowledge and skills needed to live, collaborate, and work with people of different kinds.
Who are we? We make up 28% of Malaysia's population. We care about what's happening around us.
I hope you realize that in each of these, and that itself is the greatest thing that you can do for the world, is to realize your own potential.
And we want change. In this 2-day online event, join youths across the nation. Participate in impactful conversations. Let your voice be heard.
So it's a small things. I think when we talk about wanting to create change, it is important to break down what change means.
Be part of the future.
The future is bright for one reason only, because you will grow up and you will be our future.
Join the Youth PACT now.
Okay, before we start the show, some house rules for everyone. For those of you who are on Zoom, please keep your camera off and stay muted at all times. For any questions and comments, please feel free to put them in the chat while we are keeping an eye on them. If you're on Facebook, you can still ask questions. Please head on over to MIDP Facebook page and speak your mind in the comment sections of the live stream. By the way, we actually have a survey for you to fill up. The link is being shared in the chat. We dearly hope that you can help us improve our sessions better by filling up the survey form. You can tell us what you want to hear more of in the future. Moving on, now I would like to invite the moderators to the virtual stage, Ms. Adriana Firdaus and Mr. Rifqi Faisal. Please join us on stage. Hello, hi Ms. Adriana, hi Mr. Rifqi.
Hello.
Let me just introduce Ms. Adriana and Mr. Rifqi. Adriana is an extrovert who enjoys conversation and is always excited to learn something from the people she works with or meets. As the communication director and translator of Youths.my, Adriana strives to empower youth to partake in social activism and aspire to bring awareness on many issues and encourage people to do their part to help better our country. Mr. Rifqi Faisal is the co-founder and director of development of the MYER movement. He is a cross-disciplinary advocate that champions activism in Malaysia with background in business, design, and management. He is currently working alongside numerous activists in Malaysia in pursuit of justice, fairness, and inclusivity. Okay, Ms. Adriana and Rifqi, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that introduction. Hi, my name is Adriana.
Hello, my name is Rifqi. I'm very excited to be here moderating the session with Adriana today.
So we'll be introducing the first speaker, Rozella Mary, the founder of True Complexion. So a bit about Rozella. Rozella is a champion of diversity, inclusion, and mental health. She has given talks and workshops to as many as 1,500 people for brands such as Uniqlo and CIMB Bank. Once a young girl who was insecure and bullied for her birthmark, she has made it her mission to provide teens and young adults with a safe space to overcome their body image issues and limiting beliefs so they can unleash their uniqueness and true potential. In 2019, Rozella won a Woman of the Future Southeast Asia Award and was selected for the Obama Foundation Leaders Asia Pacific Program and Eisenhower Fellowship Global Program. Introducing Rozella.
Okay, cool. So the next speaker that we have for today is actually Anas Nur Azim from MISI Solidariti. So Anas is the Central Committee of the MISI Solidariti, which helps manage administrative affairs within the organization. He's also MISI Solidariti's engagement person with the Lawan campaign. And other than MISI Solidariti, he's also part of Malaysia Muda. And if you don't know what MISI Solidariti is a youth PACT per se, coalition group, if you will, comprising of numerous youths from Malaysia that champions activism as well in any other issue that's under the sun. Adriana?
Next, we have Raudhah Nazran, the CEO and founder of Accelerate Global. She's a Malaysian government scholar who graduated with honors in law from the United Kingdom. She cuts her teeth in social entrepreneurship while in the UK, serving as the president and team leader of the UK-based social enterprise for 3 years, managing 104 members from different countries and macro-managing 5 social enterprises. She was the first Asian Muslim female to be appointed to the role by the board of advisors, as was the win the Enactus President and Team Leader of the Year award in the UK after successfully leading her team as one of the top 3 Enactus social enterprise in the United Kingdom. Next, Rifqi.
Right. It's also worth mentioning today that Raudhah is unable to be with us. So instead, we will be presenting what she has already prepared for us in advance, which will be the third speaker of today. So moving on to the last speaker for today. The last speaker for today is Shaan, who is the co-founder of UndiSabah. So hailing from Penampang, Sabah, Shaan has always been interested in volunteerism, starting off his advocacy journey as one of the founding members of Project ACT, a youth-run NGO that strives to tackle education inequity. Currently, he is one of the co-founders and the lead coordinator of UndiSabah, a youth organization that aims to promote a greater understanding of democratic process amongst youth with a focus on the Sabahan context. All right, so that is all the speakers for today. We're very, very excited to hear what they would have to present for today. All right, so we will move on to the first session. So there will be a Q&A session after all the speaker sessions have ended. So if you do have questions, just type your questions in chat and also let us know the speaker names as well, and the respective speakers will go ahead and answer your question. So do note that we will only be taking questions directly from the Q&A chat box. Please keep your mic off the entire time throughout this event. All right, Adriana.
Thank you for that, Rifqi. Now we bring on Rozella to give us her speech or story.
Thank you, Adriana, and thank you, Rifqi. Let me just quickly share my screen so we can begin. So today I'm actually going to be sharing with you about the power of your story, the power of storytelling, and how you can actually use your story to not only advocate for yourself, but to also advocate for other people and create change in your community. I know some of you might be wondering, what does storytelling have to do with advocacy work? How can it actually be my power, right? Let me share a little story about myself first so you can understand what I mean a little bit better. As mentioned earlier, my name is Rozella. Hello. I'm an advocate for diversity, inclusion, and mental health, and I'm also the founder of a community platform called True Complexion. I've done a lot of cool things, especially in the past few years, and I'm going to share some of it with you before I go deeper into my story. In 2019, that was a really good year for me. Really blessed to have it. I was actually one of the winners of the Women of the Future Southeast Asia Awards, and I was a part of the Obama Foundation Leaders Asia Pacific program. And in that same year, I was in the US for 3 months because I was a part of the Eisenhower Global Fellowship Program. In 2020, I was also, really lucky to be able to be a part of the IT Cosmetics regional campaign, where you can actually walk into a Sephora store in Malaysia and Singapore and see my face displayed in the store. And fun fact, besides my work with True Complexion and my work in the community, I am also a performer. So I've been singing for, I don't know, maybe around 8 years now. And I've sung on stages, in front of over 3,000 people. And in 2016, the Scottish band Churches, I'm not sure if some of you are familiar with them, actually remixed one of my original songs that I wrote. I'm sharing all of this with you, not to brag and say, hey, look at me, I've done so many cool things, but to tell you that this really wasn't my life until a few years ago. My life was completely different at the very beginning. I was actually born with a birthmark on my face. And as you can imagine, I think most of you are in school. School is tough. Sometimes kids can be really mean. I used to get bullied a lot and teased a lot and get called names like Strawberry or Two-Face, the supervillain from Batman, which is the picture that you see on your screen right now. And it wasn't just kids who were mean. Some teachers weren't really nice to me either. And strangers weren't kind either. They would sometimes stare at me when I walk by, or they would actually laugh at me and sometimes even stop me and ask me questions like, what's wrong with your face? Are you sick? Ew, stay away. Are you contagious? And as a young girl who's still trying to figure out who she is in this world, when you get told these stories over and over again, that you're not good enough, that you don't belong, that you need to be fixed, that something is wrong with you, you tend to believe it. And that little girl that I was, who was so excited about the future, so vibrant, so full of energy, she just slowly disappeared. And it actually got worse as I grew older. When I was a teenager, I stopped looking in the mirror because I really hated to see my face in the reflection. I stopped taking photographs because I thought, I was too ugly to be in front of the camera. And at the age of 11, I even started trying different treatments and products out there because I was so desperate to get rid of this birthmark on my face, because I was so desperate to fit in. Instead of standing out, I really wanted to just disappear. At the age of 11, I already started getting whitening injections. And obviously, if you look at my face today, it didn't work. And when it didn't work, after all that money being spent, I felt worse about myself. Like, man, I'm so bad. I'm so unworthy that I can't even be fixed. It was actually the age that I started getting depression, having suicidal thoughts. I was 11 when I started having an eating disorder as well, and it actually got worse when I grew older, because I didn't know what to do with that emotion, that pain, that anger. So I bottled everything up inside. And in my 20s, I'm not really proud of this, but it is part of my story. I actually didn't know what to do with all that negativity, with all that pain and struggle and emotion. So what did I do? I do what a lot of people do, a lot of young people do, right? I numbed myself. And for me, my drug of choice was alcohol. So at one point in my life, I was actually partying with my friends almost, a few times a week. And it got so bad that some nights I would come home like stumbling, right? And I would even be unable to open the front door because I would pass out in the front yard. Or I would actually make it into the door, make it into the house, but I would actually pass out in the shower. And my mom, she used to have to, pick me up, wipe me down, get me dressed, and put me into bed. If I'm being really honest with you, I don't remember much about my 27th birthday because I passed out before it was even midnight. And what I do, remember very clearly until today is what happened the morning after. I actually woke up in a strange hotel room, kind of in a blur, kind of in a panic because I didn't know where I was. And, luckily it wasn't a stranger sleeping beside me. I was safe, it was my cousin. But that morning I was so sick. I kept running back and forth to the bathroom because I couldn't stop throwing up. It was so bad that by afternoon, my cousin had to drive me to the clinic because it just wouldn't stop. I was in the clinic for 3 hours getting on an IV drip in this small little tiny room because I had severe alcohol poisoning. And as I was sitting there on my own, waiting for the alcohol to drain out of my body, I was just thinking to myself, man, is this what my future is going to look like? My future just flashed in front of me and I got scared because it made me realize that if I kept continuing living this way, like it or not, I'd probably end up killing myself. And this is really why, I do what I do today. My story is why I started True Complexion in 2015 because it's not a unique story. So many people struggle with the same things that I have when I was younger. Some of you might have a similar story as well, but you haven't shared it. But it's really why I started True Complexion, a community platform where we can celebrate people's differences, where we can celebrate diversity, where we can have, open and honest conversations to normalize people living with differences, living with disabilities or medical conditions, right? And I wanted to actually humanize these people by telling their stories and allowing them to shine beyond their appearances and the way that they look, beyond, their disability or their health issues, beyond their past, right? And what they've done, the mistakes that they've made before. I wanted to highlight the humanity in them, the soul in them, the spirit in them, what makes them human, what makes them beautiful. And the thing is, since 2015, I've interviewed over 250 people for this platform and told their stories. And every single time I've sat down with someone, everyone has told me that they too have been misjudged or misunderstood or mistreated because they were different. But the question that we really need to ask ourselves is, who made us different? Why are we different, right? And it really boils down to stories, the stories that we've been telling each other from one generation to the next, the stories that we've been repeating to ourselves for centuries, year after year, right? Some of these stories you and I have grown up listening to, seeing, right? Stories about people like me, people who have visible differences, people who have a disability or a medical condition or mental health issues, were often portrayed as either one of two things, right? We're either, the person that you need to be sympathized with, the person that's, so kasian, so pitiful, right? Or it's the flip side, the person that is scary, that is grotesque, that you need to stay away from. I was branded as that, being called two-faced, right? And especially for women and young girls, the pressure to look a certain way is really bad, right? You see advertising campaigns that always tell us that we need to fix into this little tiny box, have a certain kind of body, a certain kind of features, certain kind of skin complexion for us to be considered beautiful. And all these stereotypical images that we see day after day, it's really harmful and damaging to the community. I'm not too sure, some of you I think might have seen Shang-Chi, you know, the latest Marvel movie. Still in 2021, 2022, we're still seeing these images, you know, Shang-Chi, if you remember, the minute that they had the fight scene on the bus, the villain had a limb differences, right? And we're still telling this narrative over and over again, boxing people like me, people like millions of other people in this world who have a differences, we're either born with or acquired. That narrative, that negative narrative that stereotypes us is really damaging. And we wonder why so many people struggle with mental health issues. We wonder why so many people, you know, struggle with insecurities or not comfortable with themselves. And this is why, because we keep repeating the same old story. So it's actually our job, my job as well, to change the narrative by being brave enough to tell our stories, to break the stigma, right? And that is really why I'm so passionate about working with a lot of young women, especially young girls. I've worked with schools in the UK, and I've also worked with refugee students in Malaysia, because I think it's just so important for us to change the narrative. Because sometimes, you know, you don't realize that that thing that you hate about yourself the most, sometimes that thing is actually your superpower. Because in my life, I was so miserable, so down, and I hated the way I was, the way that I looked for so long, but I didn't realize the minute that I started accepting myself and embracing myself, and the minute I started sharing my story about what it's like having a birthmark on my face, my life completely flipped. My birthmark, instead of becoming a curse, something that I really hated about myself, became my strength, became my power. And I use it today, you know, not just to help me advance in my career and create opportunities for myself. I use it also to help other people, younger people especially, to come into their power and own their power as well. And that's why I do what I do. And I love this quote by Brene Brown, which I'm going to leave you with to end my session. It says, "Owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do." So if there's something that, you know, you're a little bit insecure about, or you're a little bit shy about, perhaps try and see it at a different light, and see how you can actually use that to push yourself forward, to be your message, so you can help not only create a change in your life, but also create change in your community. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate having this time with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rozella, for that wonderful story. When you said the power of storytelling, I really felt the power from that. You have such an amazing voice, and thank you for being so vulnerable with us. And it's amazing how you described yourself being in such a vulnerable place. And then we get to see how much you've grown since then and all the amazing things you've done. It's really inspiring. We do have a few questions if you have time for that.
Yeah, sure, let's go.
Yeah, thank you. So for kids that look outside the norm with maybe eczema or
psoriasis,
what's your advice for them to navigate the world?
I think navigate your insight first, you know, because when you listen to what other people say, sometimes your judgment about yourself gets clouded and you think that you are what they say you are, but the reality is you're not. You know, you're so much more than your skin, you're so much more than your body, right? You have so many talents, you have so many skills, you have so many characteristics and personalities that makes you a wonderful person. So you have to look at yourself as an entire package instead of just focusing on the way that you look, because our community, our society, that's the first thing that we see, right? We see with our eyes first, and we see people's physicality first. And so we're quick to judge without even getting to know a person better. So I think it's really about understanding yourself more, doing a little bit of digging deeper. You know, for me, I really had to go to therapy, get counseling, do those kind of things, get into groups that are very supportive, communities, right? Like when I was younger, we didn't have all of this platform. We didn't have all this information with the internet. But for kids right now, they're so privileged in the sense that you have access to information from all over the world. You have access to a lot of great groups that you can join, great programs that you can join, and even people that you can look up to, right? Like other activists or influencers, right? And I think another thing that's important talking about activists and influencers, and when it comes to social media, being very mindful of who you follow as well. Because if you follow, say, for example, I don't know, Kim Kardashian, right? And you feel insecure about yourself every time you look at her post, like, why do I not look like that? Then unfollow, protect yourself first. Yeah, that's what I always say. And that's what I always remind myself as well.
I think that's really great advice. As someone that suffers from eczema myself, protecting yourself in terms of looking at others and comparing yourself is definitely something that is necessary. So I want to move on to the next question. It's actually on narrative. So as we all understand that narrative is a huge part of advocacy, changing narratives, altering narratives are very, very important. Currently, there is this narrative surrounding normalcy and beauty standards, whereby you need to look a certain way in order for you to feel a certain way or for you to be a certain way, right? So how can someone begin to change that narratives for the environment that is around them?
I think it starts, for me, it really was just talking about my insecurity, about my vulnerability, opening up about it, and just telling people, hey, this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to show up in the world. And if you don't like it, then, well, bye. Kind of just owning up, owning your stories, owning your imperfection, which I don't like to call it imperfection because it's not, it's just your differences, right? And I think it's really about surrounding yourself with good people, because when you're constantly bombarded by negative stories, negative narrative about who you are and what you're capable of, what you can and cannot do. Like I said, when I was younger, I didn't have that tools to navigate the situation. So I just believed it, right? Because everyone kept telling me the same thing, that you're not good enough, that you're ugly, that you don't deserve love, that you don't deserve this and that, and whatever it is, right? That you can't be on camera, you can't be on stage. So I hid from performing. I wanted to do music ever since I was a kid, but I didn't do that until my 20s because I was so afraid of what other people said, what they would say about me. Right? So it's really about deciding what you want to do, who you want to be in this world, and just going for it. And if people don't understand it, then you're not here to make people understand. Yeah, that's you're true. Here to be you. Yeah.
That's wonderful advice. And I think that even if you are, quote unquote, within the norms in your physical looks, I think it's also pretty acceptable advice. That you should never should have apologized for being yourself and being yourself in your identity. Thank you so much, Rozella, for taking the time with us today. So we're actually going to move on to the next speaker, who is Anas from Solidariti. But I'd like to remind everyone again that we are taking questions from the audience. So in the next session, if you have any questions for Anas, feel free to drop it in the chat directly when the time he's speaking. Or alternatively, we can also proceed with the Q&A session that we'll have later on at the end of today's session. All right, so without further ado, I would like to welcome Anas over to the stage from Solidariti to share his perspective on activism. Hi, Anas.
Hi, everyone. Wait, let me just share my screen.
Sure.
All right, I hope you all can see that. Right, good morning, everyone. I'm Anas Norazim, here to represent MISI Solidariti, or MS for short. I want to thank MYER for granting me this opportunity to speak alongside some very amazing people. I'm truly humbled. I also want to say early on that public speaking isn't exactly something I'm familiar with, so I apologize in advance. And I had a look through like everyone's presentations before this. I can't say I'm able to replicate the visual grandeur of their presentations. So I'm afraid from me, you're all just gonna get like a normal PowerPoint. Nonetheless, I hope that you all have something valuable to learn from my presentation. And I hope that inspires and informs your future engagement. Should you choose to take on any organizing work in the future. A bit of clarification just before we begin. I'm going to use the term organizing a lot in this presentation. It's just a term I'm more familiar with, but it's more or less interchangeable with other terms like activism, advocacy, and the likes. In this presentation, I'm primarily going to talk about MISI Solidariti's experience and the sort of things we've learned from our engagement in organizing. But before we get to the meat of the subject, let's perhaps begin with a bit of exposition about myself, just to give you all a bit of context where I'm coming from and what sort of experiences inform my perspective and engagements in organizing, and that might be something that you want to take into consideration when reassessing what I'm presenting here. So I'm currently a Central Committee member in MISI Solidariti. Specifically, I'm part of what we call the Members Council, which helps in administrative work, advises MISI Solidariti's long-term and general direction, and ensure that whatever we do in the organization reflects the needs and aspirations of our members. So I began my engagement in organizing in the year 2016. I might be wrong here because I don't exactly remember, but I do remember that Trump was campaigning at the time, so I can't be that far off. So I actually had my start in Melbourne, Australia, though I did a lot of organizing with the overseas Malaysian community over there. And from the connections I built there, it wasn't that difficult to start doing the same thing over here. I volunteered with various organizations, doing various works, handling various issues, ranging from political parties, trade unions, student organizations, advocacy and charity groups. Though most of what I usually do concern protests, strikes, civil disobedience, and political education. So you can see over here a picture of me in a protest. Also some other pictures as well. So in the process of doing this slide, I kind of realized that I don't exactly have a lot of pictures of myself to show. And the ones I do have, I don't exactly consider appropriate to show. You know, me getting dragged away by cops and lots of rude gestures. Comes with the nature of the work, I guess. But anyway, that's enough about me. Let's move to MISI Solidariti. So what is MISI Solidariti? We're a relatively young group. We only started in early 2020. The niche, I guess, that we're trying to fulfill is relatively simple. That we see there's a lot of young people out there with strong opinions about various issues, whether it be labor, the environment, gender equality, and so on. And there is a strong desire amongst them to do something about these issues. And fulfilling this is no easy task. In fact, for many people, one of the biggest hurdles is just finding where to start. So MS attempts to fulfill this by giving these youths a platform where we congregate our resources, skills, knowledge, and experience. And that helps like our members to start somewhere. And indeed, the vast majority of people that who join us are people with little to no prior experience in organizing. And this actually includes our founders when they founded this organization. The way it works is that someone, whether they be a member of the group or an external group looking to collaborate, will pitch us an idea, right? And then we go through this process of deliberation, right? Is it feasible? Is there room for improvement? What are we looking to achieve with this? What should we be looking out for? And if it passes, and once it passes, we ask around our members and gather people who would be interested in participating, and then form what we call a working group. And then this working group basically goes off and does whatever needs to be done. Of course, the working groups have access to various resources, including but not limited to our social media page, help from other members, connections, and manpower to mobilize. The way I put it makes it sound like there's a strict formal procedure to how we do it, but in operation, it actually runs on a more informal basis. It's a lot more chill. Now, all of this does mean that MISI Solidariti as an organization does not have a specific issue that we fight for. Though the positions we hold as a group tend to be generally progressive. So in consequence of that, we've taken up various causes. To list some of the issues we've taken up, first, the degazetment of the Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve, deaths in custody, mental health advocacy, fighting for the rights of the Orang Asli in Post Lanai, the Lawan movement, police brutality, refugee rights, just to name a few. And you can see here, posters that we've made in our involvement in organizing work as well. Now, for those of you who have interest in participating in these sort of activities, whether it be through starting your own initiative or joining one, we at MISI Solidariti have a few advice to give you. And this comes from what we've learned ourselves, and we hope that this would be beneficial for you. The first advice we have to give is that you can't be certain of success in whatever it is that you decide to do. And that's okay. In fact, I'd say that it's impossible to be fully certain because ultimately you're dealing, in this line of work, you're dealing with human actions on a socio-political scale, right? And with that in mind, it's impossible to consider and address every possibility. Ultimately, the skill that's going to be tested the most is your ability to plan flexibly and react to developing situations. You'll make mistakes, and this is the world of organizing after all, where defeat is common and victory is ambiguous. But the thing about mistakes is that you can learn from them, and what's left then is just to have the courage to press forward. Our second advice is to always take a step back. When faced with any situation, it helps to approach it with a clear mind. Assess the situation, assess your capabilities, your strengths, your weaknesses. How are your commitments? Because sometimes, a lot of times actually, it's a case of having to pick your battles or like starting small. You have limited time and resources. Burnout is a very real thing with very real consequences. So you do want to avoid that. you also want full awareness of what it is you're doing. Again, you can't be entirely certain of whether you are doing the right thing, but you want to be aware that you're making that bet, right? There are going to be moments that call for letting yourself go. I guess letting yourself go like with the flow of events that's outside your control, but you still want to be aware that you're doing that, right? You want to be aware that, right, I'm letting myself go, because ultimately you don't want to be lost. There are plenty more advice that we can probably give, but these are what I feel to be the most important. They might sound like common sense, but you'd be surprised how often people don't do it. I'm guilty of that as well. With that, I want to end my presentation with a quote by David Graeber, a quote that I found very inspiring, and for me at least. So the ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something we make and could just as easily make differently. And with that, I want to end my presentation, and thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anas, for sharing with us the experiences you've learned over the past 2 years with Mrs. Solidariti. So if you guys don't know, Mrs. Solidariti is also one of the fastest growing youth organizations in Malaysia. Anas won't take credit for that, but I think it's pretty well deserved regardless. So we're going to move on to some questions. So the first question that we have is, in advocacy, there are many things that are uncertain, especially in multiple climates. And I feel like recent events have shown that it's really just completely uncertain, right? So how then do young advocates navigate this uncertainty?
So there are a few things you can do. First is, as I've mentioned before, is to be able to plan flexibly, because you can only plan up to a certain point. And then especially if your form of advocacy involves, I guess, fighting against an opponent, for lack of a better word, and then like you can only plan up to a certain point, and then you'll have to wait for like, right, what's the next action you're going to take, right? So that's one thing, plan flexibly. Secondly is just you can, I guess, be more confident of what it is that you're doing just by having prior knowledge. And you can get that by first experience, meaning that it's something that you gain over the time that you do these things. And secondly is just reading widely, and that helps inform the decisions that you're going to take.
Right. Yeah, I think that's quite a stellar advice given, especially the last one. I think more people should read. I don't think we read as much, and we sort of rely on social media a lot more to inform us of certain things. So thanks for that advice. So the next question that we have is actually from the audience. Lisa asks, as youths, I have many insecurities to enter in a professional career life where everyone speaks good English, be professionally, and I will be like very kampong if we compare it to them. This will extremely break my confidence. So what can I do about it?
Right. I mean,
it's a tough question.
This is a form of career advice as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. I think we can sort of just stop at the fact that it's a very difficult question. But if I had to give any advice, I think number one is that, comparing yourself is not necessarily a good thing, like what Rozella said. And I think based on Anna's advice, it's really about your self-development and the experiences that you've incurred in the past as well. So we do have one last question, which is organizing and advocacy is not an easy task, right? So what's your advice for a young new advocate that seeks to organize their respective communities to challenge policies or individuals, given you have an involvement within the Lawan movement?
Yeah, it is a very tall task to be carrying out. But like at a certain point, you just have to start, right? That's really the best advice I can give lah. And you can plan, again, you can plan, but you can never be certain of what it is that you're doing. It's ultimately going to boil down to just like doing it and then learning from I guess from the experience, right? Whether it be mistakes and whatnot. The second thing is don't do it yourself lah. These kind of things are teamwork, a team efforts lah, and very dependent on like you being able to work with other people, right? Because there are numerous skills that is needed in these in this type of work. You know, I can list off a few. You probably need someone who is able to speak to a crowd. You probably need someone who has legal knowledge, and you yourself, you can't rely on yourself to have all of that, all of those skills, right?
Yeah.
So eventually, you are going to need to rely on other people, and you're going to have to collaborate with other people or whatnot. So,
yeah, I definitely think collaborating is an essential aspect when it comes to organizing. I think if I had to speak from my own experiences, started my own organization as well, is that often people feel the need to know every single thing, you know, to start doing things. But really, and perhaps Adriana can chime in as well, is that you don't need to know everything to be a leader. Really, the process of being a leader is more about learning to learn from others and also help others learn from yourself. Yeah, so I guess if you're asking for extra advice in terms of leadership, that's where I would stand. Adriana, any thoughts?
I think that is great advice. And I also think that this advice can be applied to almost anything. I feel like when we want to take on something new or when we want to just try new things, we always want to go in either the most prepared, already knowing everything. And sometimes that just leads to you not ever starting. And why wait? You can just start. You can start small, start learning, start being more aware. And you can ask people who maybe know more than you. And like you said, collaborate. And over time, it will just build up. Like, I think everyone here, everyone has had their beginnings before where they are now.
Yeah.
So you can also achieve or something like this, but you just need to start and we'll see where you go from there.
Can? Okay, so I think I have one last question, maybe this one's for Anas. So just, you know, splitting the tea here. So all of us roughly started our advocacy career. Maybe Anas started a little bit earlier, but being as part of an organization, we all started within the same year. I think in 2020 during the first part of COVID, right? So I'm familiar with my motivations, but I'm a bit unfamiliar with Anas's motivations actually for being involved in MISI Solidariti so actively. What's your motivation?
Well, again, I started organizing work a bit earlier than the formation of MISI Solidariti. But my motivation for being involved in MISI Solidariti specifically is that I think I've mentioned this before as well in during my presentation, is that the majority of the members are new and they're completely green, and that's and the Malaysian activism scene is pretty small. For those of you who are familiar, it's like, you know, one person, it's very easy to know like everyone else. So it's pretty inspiring like to see like this whole group of youth who have zero exposure, but nonetheless very committed towards what they do. And like I personally felt that that was something I wanted to support. And so that's why I joined MISI Solidariti. As for
awesome.
my personal motivations in doing organizing, that's a long story in itself, but I mean, if I were to summarize it, I began doing charity work in 2016, and that exposed me to a lot of, I guess, more marginalized communities like the homeless, undocumented migrants, a whole list of them. And it just exposed me to like how much the world can be improved. And then once you know these people personally, it becomes, for you, it becomes a personal issue. You know, it's a personal, because they're the people you know. So and that's really like where I start. What really convinced me to start doing this kind of things.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the advocates in the Malaysian scene sort of have the similar reasons as well, which is always to protect marginalized communities in very differing issues. Adriana, anything you want to chime in on? No. Okay.
So
you want to take the? Yeah.
I think everything's been covered. Thank you so much, Anas, for sharing with us your story and sharing with everyone here what they can do if they want to navigate activism. So I think with that, we can move on to our next speaker. So unfortunately, Raudhah, who is our next speaker, cannot be here with us for this session, but we do have a video from her, and I hope that you all enjoy it.
Hey guys, my name is Raudhah and I'm supposed to be one of your speakers for today. I'm very sorry that I cannot be there with all of you live. I have to go cut my digital wristband today because I'll be out of quarantine. Good news is I've tested negative thrice, so I'm really thrilled to be out, and I'm so bummed that I cannot be there with all of you today. But I do hope that this video recording will suffice and serve as a remedy for me not being, or for me not presenting the presentation live today. Anyway, so a bit of background about me. Well, I'm Raudhah, I've already mentioned that. I am currently the Chief Executive Officer and founder of a social enterprise called Accelerate Global. It is a social enterprise that aims to tackle the issue of youth unemployment worldwide. Yeah, we've got big dreams through upskilling programs. So our bread and butter is we run upskilling programs to develop youths into becoming entrepreneurs of their own, as well as provide them with the career-ready skills they need. We've been running for about 2 years now. This is our third year coming up, this 2022, and we've worked with over 5,000 youths across Malaysia. I really also want to share with all of you, I think it's something that I'm really proud of myself and the team, and just to humbly share that all of our programs have got 100% success rate. All of the youths that come onto our program are now entrepreneurs and are now generating income. So I decided to start with a little bit of introduction of my company, my social enterprise, because when I look at the topic that we are talking about today, which is, be the change and disrupt the status quo, I disrupted the status quo through my social enterprise, Accelerate Global. You see, when I was first given the topic by M, I remember looking at the topic and it instantly reminded me of what happened to me 3 years ago when I first started Accelerate. So a bit of background, I graduated law from the United Kingdom. I was a JPA scholar. And so obviously, the normal expectations that people have is you come back to the country and you serve the country you work, right? So you accept employment, you go on the traditional route of employment, make money and serve the country. But I clearly didn't do that. So I remember coming back and I rejected all the job offers that were right in front of me. It was quite scary because I wanted to pursue my dream of becoming a social entrepreneur, of actually starting a social enterprise and running upskilling programs for the youths, especially for those in the marginalized communities, right? And I remember when I came back to Malaysia, having been in the UK for 3 years, I know that my network and my connection in Malaysia was not as solid, obviously. And I remember coming back, it was quite nerve-wracking, you know, I was really nervous, and it was pretty spooky at the same time, because obviously, you know, I don't know anyone, and then to build a social enterprise, you've got to at least have a bit of a connection. But I did go out on a limb, you know, I went out of my comfort zone and I talked to new people. But I remember specifically this one person that I talked to when I came back from the UK. I talked to her and I told her all about the goal of Accelerate, why I want to start Accelerate, you know, the ambition I have, the ideas I have. And I remember leaving the call with so much devastation. I remember her telling me, and I remember it until today, obviously, that I sound like a youth that is entitled, and I just sound like another millennial who didn't want to accept the traditional route of employment. I'm so young, you know, I don't have experience, I don't know what to do, I can never make it. And lastly, she said, leave it in the hands of the seniors and the experts that are already in the ecosystem to build the ecosystem forward. And I was really taken aback, right? I was like, is this how people see things, right, in the country? Is this how people view youths in the country? I was pretty much cultural shock, actually. But I took a step back and I started to think about the things that she was telling me, and especially about the fact that, oh, leave it to the seniors and leave it to the experts to continue building the ecosystem. And I thought, actually, wait a minute, right? Actually, the youths that are now, that, you know, the youths of today, essentially all of us, we will be the next generation of leaders in the next coming years. And so, like it or not, there needs to be an integration between the youths of today and the socio-economy, the political landscape, businesses, social entrepreneurship landscape, everything that is a part of the nation. You know, we've got to be connected with these things, because if not, we won't learn, we won't grow, and later on when we do become leaders, you know, we won't have the necessary experience to carry out the duty or the role. And so I thought, you know what? This is the time where I've got to mature up and isolate some of the negative status quo, or some of the negative stereotypes that were you know, sort of given to me, such as, you know, you don't have experience, you're a youth, you know, just leave it to the experts, leave it to the seniors. It's time for me to filter out all these thoughts aside and obviously just move forward, because it's important that youths move forward and showcase and prove that we are actually capable of leading, that we are actually capable of creating something spectacular and something incredible. So I remember that story like it was yesterday, and I just thought of sharing that with all of you, because when we talk about disrupting the status quo, you know, it's very important to understand that when you are disrupting the status quo, there will be a lot of either backlash, and there will be people who will question your decision of actually, you know, disrupting the status quo. And it's important to know, and I just wanted to let all of you know that, you know, I've been there, I've done that, and I'm sure all the other speakers that are invited to speak on this topic have also done that. And so to all of you who are listening, to youths who are listening, who are looking to do something big and who are looking to obviously create something new, who are looking to disrupt the status quo, I say go for it, because you have me and you have all the other speakers, and you know, we're here. So if you ever need help, or if you ever need advice, we're all here. I also actually want to talk about what drives me forward to keep disrupting the status quo, and to actually keep going despite the many, you know, no-sayers, and despite the many people telling me that, you know, I don't have what it takes, or, you know, I'm not experienced enough, and all the other things, right? What really kept me going was that purpose of mine. I was very clear as to why I want to do what I want to do. I was very clear from the get-go why I wanted to start Accelerate Global. And the reason is, first, is for the beneficiaries, and it has always been for the beneficiaries. I believe every single youth, as you know, Accelerate tackles unemployment issues, and we help youths, become financially sustainable. I always believe that the youths today will shape the future, in the next coming years. And so if the youths today are unemployed, are not given access to education, are not given the opportunities they deserve to actually build a sustainable life, it will have repercussions on not just obviously their life, but also their family, or the family that they're going to build, the nation. And so I think when I look at the issue of unemployment, I see the repercussions that come with it. When you're unemployed, there's a threat of poverty. When there's a threat of poverty, there's a threat of homelessness, and then it becomes a nation issue. And I always believe that no one deserves to be in that position, and that it is my responsibility to help to the best of my ability, to guide the youths to the best of my ability, to never ever be in that position again. Every single youth is out there, I believe, have a unique capability, that we've all got our unique traits and we've all got our own talents. And so I believe in that. And until today, what pushes me, what wakes me up every morning is actually the beneficiaries themselves. Every single time I feel like giving up, I feel like, this is really difficult, because it is difficult. The journey of starting a social enterprise for me, the journey of disrupting status quo almost every single day is exhausting. And you've got that purpose of yours needs to be so strong that it supplements you to keep going on a daily basis. And for me, what keeps me going on a daily basis is my beneficiaries. Every time I talk to them, looking at their determination, looking at their commitment, and just listening to them, presenting their ideas, talking to them, understanding their dreams, it's just so rejuvenating. And I keep telling myself that you've got to keep going. You've got to keep going for them, because they deserve that opportunity. They deserve to have that space and that platform to be elevated. They deserve to have the opportunity to change their lives and to create a better life, not just for them, but for their family and their future family as well. So it really helps me to stay grounded as well. I think connecting with your purpose and actually understanding the beauty and the benefit of your effort, of your of the initiative or that your organization is doing is really vital. And that has, that's what's keeping me alive until today. Now, the last thing that I also want to talk to all of you about is the very fact that when you look at age is just a number. I think that is the one stereotype, one status quo that all of us youths are trying to break. Every single time you enter into a room, at least for me, every single time I enter into a room, there's always a question of how old are you? And then there are two sides. Either they're impressed because you're young, or they don't really believe in your experience. One thing that I can say and one thing that I can share is that I have met a lot of people that are much younger than me. I'm 25, by the way, that are much younger than me but have so much wisdom. But I've also met people who are older than me and who are still, trying to figure their life out. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're trying to figure your life out at 30 or at 20, it's completely fine. What I'm trying to say is that age is just a number, and at the end of the day, we've got our own journey. And it's just really vital that we understand that no matter our age, the most important thing that we've got to think about when we want to be the change, when we want to disrupt the status quo, is that willingness to learn, unlearn, and relearn. It's important when you want to disrupt the status quo, especially the age status quo, right, which I've been trying to break almost every day of my life, is you've got to show that willingness to learn. You've got to want to grow. And as youths, it is our responsibility to keep learning, to keep growing, and to keep proving, that we've got what it takes. We're not all talks. We've also got knowledge. We've also got that expertise. We've also got that experience to actually lead something. And that is what's going to actually disrupt the status quo. It's important to understand that the status quo, stereotypes, connotations, whatever you want to call it, cannot be disrupted just by talking. It cannot. It must, if we really want to disrupt it, it must be disrupted with results and proof that we are indeed not what they say we are. So essentially, if they say that you youthers don't have what it takes because of your lack of experience, it's to disrupt that is not to go on an argument or a debate. To disrupt that is to showcase results. And to end my speech, because it's already the 13th minute, I know I'm given only 10 minutes, I want to end it with a story. When I was in the UK, I was appointed as the president of a university-based social enterprise called Enactors Essex, and I was the first Muslim Asian woman that was ever appointed to the position. All of the previous presidents were either British or, British. So essentially they were all actually British, sorry. They were all, native British people or African American or African Britain. And I was the first Muslim Asian woman that was ever appointed. And I remember I was breaking so many connotations, so many status quo. People didn't believe that I could do it. First of all, I wear hijab, so that was really difficult for me. I was discriminated, I was harassed by my own team because of who I am. But I didn't bother to go on a debate with them. All I did was I proved that I can do it through the results. And I remember that year when I became president, I took the organization to being top 3 social enterprises and actors in the UK. And when that happened, and everybody stayed silent, because at the end of the day, you can only shut the people off by showcasing to them the results, by showing them what you can do, by showing you the output the output of your effort. And that is the best way possible to disrupt the status quo. So I call upon all youths who are listening now to make effort, to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep working harder, to keep showing results and developing results, to showcase to the world that we youths are not all talks. We actually also can do our jobs. I'm very much happy to take questions from all of you. I'm sorry that I cannot answer your questions live, but feel free to connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram is Raudhah Nazran, my name, with the double N at the back. I think M or the MIDP team can perhaps drop it in the chat. So connect with me on Instagram. I'd be very much happy to answer your questions. I'm so sorry that I'm not there with all of you live today, but I do hope that some of the things I talk about today make sense. It will be much better live, obviously. Like I said, very much happy to take the conversation further. Feel free to connect, drop me a direct message, and I'll answer your question. Right, thank you so much, and have a lovely session, everybody.
That was a very lovely video from Raudhah. So again, she's not here today to answer questions live. So we'll be moving on to our next speaker, Shaan.
Okay. Hi everyone. Just let me share my screen for a while. Yeah. Okay, sorry, my computer is quite lagging. Sorry, really. Okay. Okay. Can you guys see it? Okay, I think it's cool right now. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Shaan, and today I'm gonna talk more on defining social norms for social change. So I'm currently the one of the co-founders and the lead coordinator for UndiSabah. But just before we start, I would just like to just reiterate that like Rozella mentioned, as she likes to tell stories, I also love to tell stories. So today my presentation would be more of a storytelling session. It's gonna be very chill, And please forgive me if I were to mix a bit of Malay as well, as English is not really my first language. But yeah, I'll try my best to speak as fluent as I can. But yeah, let's start. So for today, I'm just going to talk firstly about my background, and second is journey in advocacy, and third is going against social norms. So it's going to be a very brief, storytelling session. So if you guys have any questions, please do, as I believe, I can share more when I know what you guys would want to hear as well through the questions and through the Q&A session. So my whole presentation is just going to be a lot of pictures, but here is my family back in Sabah. So just a brief introduction and a brief background of me. I was born and raised in a village in Penampang, Sabah. And one thing about growing up as a Kadazan in my community, there's a lot of taboo that we have to face. And growing up, it's always the fact that they don't really want a lot of people don't really encourage youths to speak out in certain issues, especially when it comes to its politics, especially when it comes to, things that are just against social norms. So what they will always tell you, like my parents and even my, my cousins, my aunts would always tell me is to just, just study first. You can talk about this later in 10 or 15 years time. And I think a lot of you face that as well. So my family is quite a conservative family. As you can see, I'm like the fat kid on the bottom right, bottom right corner there. I really like my family. And growing up in a kampong, it's always been a very, very tight-knit community. So everyone who's everyone there. And you can actually see my house that I grew up when I was a child. On the right-hand side, you see that there's like a wooden kampong a house there. So that was my house. I grew up in that house. So back in high school, the reason why I joined, how I started advocacy is because, as I mentioned before, being part of, a tight-knit community back in Sabah, back in my village, there's always this need of helping other people. I grew up, every time there's a flood in my kampong, my family members would always ask me to go and volunteer to help clean out the dirt, to help with anything that is possible. And that's just something that has been stuck to me ever since. And here's a picture of me in high school. So basically in high school, I always wanted to do something with my friends because, we just feel like, we have this opportunity, of getting an education in high school, that we should use this to actually help other people as well. So here's actually a donation drive that my friends and I did for the earthquake that happened in Ranau back in 2014, 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So what we did was we collected funds from our friends, from our families, especially from Semenanjung, from KL and Selangor, to actually be channeled back to the people in Ranau. So we actually did this with a local church back then. So this is where it goes interesting, is my journey towards advocacy. I was really fortunate enough to get quite good results back in SPM. I didn't really expect it. And you can see here on the first picture on your left, it was a picture with me and my grandma. Right after I got my results for SPM, because I can actually walk from my grandmother's house to my school. So when I got the results, I went back and I gave it to my grandma. She didn't understand a thing, but it's okay. She was happy because I was happy. So I think that was like a nice thing. And I was really fortunate enough to get a good result. And from that, I managed to apply to a few different scholarships, and I managed to score a scholarship under Yayasan Khazanah. And this was a really, really meaningful feat for me. But then again, I was really insecure about myself. And just like Lisa, I was, through the chats and the comments just now, I was really insecure because one, I didn't come from a place of privilege. And also I was raised up in an environment, I don't really know this stuff to begin with. So in Khazanah, in Yayasan Khazanah, we actually have this dinner whereby people would wear formal shirts and formal stuff. And that was my first time going towards a formal dinner in KL. And I didn't know that we had to wear formal suits and formal, all this stuff in conference, all those stuff. I didn't even have a leather shoe to begin with. So when I entered there and I saw all these people wearing this, this stuff that I don't even own, I felt diminished in a way. I felt I wanted to cry, to be honest, because as I mentioned, I don't want to show that a kampung, a kampung kid going, macam, what do they say? Berusaha masuk kampung or something. But it's something like that. Like, I didn't want to show that it's me. So I was very demotivated. Even though I managed to score a scholarship, but then going and talking to people of this high caliber, of this high class, with almost to perfect English, I didn't know what to do. But thankfully, one of my friends that I just met there, who is also my roommate, he actually offered me his suit and his extra suit and his extra leather shoes, and I was very grateful for that up to this day. And just to answer Lisa's question just now, I mean, I was in your place before. I think I still am whenever I go to meet people who speak almost perfect English. But I think one thing that really helps me is that you have to embrace that, you will raise up in a different kind of household. The place that, we don't speak English that much, and there's certain challenges that we face through that other people don't face through, and there's other opportunities that people get to have that we don't get to have, and that's okay. At the end of the day, it's about you accepting to make mistakes, and then you just try. I mean, when you're going there to meet people of a higher class, or like people who actually speak good English, that's already a step for you to move forward, and I think that's something to be proud of. Yeah, so that's it. Okay. So what inspired me after my high school and after I got the scholarship is I didn't want other youths in my community to go through the tough path that I had to endure. So the part that I had to endure to get the scholarship was really tough. It's because there was no one to actually guide me to get a scholarship. I was left all alone, in the sense that I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know how to apply. I actually had to walk from my house to a nearby cyber cafe to actually apply for scholarships. And imagine people were playing Dota. Back then it was Dota. So first blood, and all this stuff. And I was there with my calculator and with all these, all these documents to actually apply for scholarships. I didn't have anyone. I didn't know what to write. I didn't know what to do, what kind of scholarships are out there. But all I had was the internet. So I tried my best to actually apply for scholarships. I tried to apply for everything that I could find, because I think at that moment of time, it's either I get a scholarship and pursue my studies, or I might not pursue my studies at all. There was like a very hard situation for me to enter through. So that's when my friends and I, when I got the scholarship for Yayasan Khazanah, that's when my friends and I actually started Project Ad. So what Project Ad is it's a youth movement. It's like a youth organization that actually strives to help people from underprivileged communities, especially from the indigenous communities as well, to actually guide them and give them the insights that they need to further their tertiary education. In the sense that we give scholarship advice, we give them a person to talk to and a mentor to guide them, because we realized that a lot of these opportunities were accessible to those, especially in the Klang Valley areas, but then it's not accessible to those that are in, let's say, Sabah and Sarawak and in other interior parts of Malaysia as well. So we give them this platform to actually ask us anything. We also do help them to proofread the essays for free, and this is something I'm really proud of, because I'm actually helping my community, and I realized that I'm very privileged enough to get a scholarship, and I want other people in my community to get that as well. Not necessarily a scholarship, but as long as they are able to actually pursue their tertiary education dreams. So after Project Ad, I left Project Ad, I think last year to actually focus on another different NGO, which is UndiSabah. So going back towards UndiSabah, it's because Project Ad is mostly Malaysian-wide. It's a Malaysian-wide youth organization, and I really wanted to do something that is focused mainly on Sabah itself. So we're in UndiSabah, we're defining social norms. As you can see here, there's two phrases that I think a lot of Sabahans would hear, and I think you guys would hear it as well. First is the "Buli bah kalau kau," and also one is the "Biar sajalah batu." It's two of these phrases are the ones that I think that a lot of Sabahans would hear, because everyone would say it. Especially when youths, let's say for me, when I speak up against my parents, when I speak about politics back in the days, they would always just say, "Oh, biar sajalah batu. Nanti sejak kau apa tuh, nanti sejak kau belajar, kau belajar dulu, nanti baru kau cakap tentang tuh." Or like, "Oh, it's okay, it's not your issue to talk about." "Oh, it's okay batu." Okay, like, the santai chill that a lot of Sabahans have in us. And what UndiSabah does is we're actually trying to break the social norm and encouraging youths to actually speak out. So how UndiSabah started is there was this election that happened, the sudden Sabah State election that happened 2 years ago, whereby Sabah went into a sudden election. And we feel, my friends and I, we feel that the time is now. Youths need to be informed about the democratic process, in the sense of they need to know about what's right and why they should vote, etc., etc. And especially since Undi 18 is now enacted, a lot more youths will be able to vote. So we started UndiSabah because first is we wanted to provide a platform, which is to provide a platform for Sabah youths to grasp a greater understanding of the democratic process. We understand that a lot of youths in Sabah, especially when we started UndiSabah, a lot of youths want to speak about politics, and they want to find a friend to speak about politics, but they don't know where to talk about it. Because sometimes when you talk politics to your friends as well, they would sometimes dismiss you because you could be seen like a serious person. I always said, it's okay, kau belajar saja lah tu, nanti lah batu, and all the sense of stuff. And also the second one is taboo, which is we invite youths to engage in a proper discourse and encourage them to talk about what is considered taboo topics in Sabah. So we talk a lot about in UndiSabah, it's not mainly on politics. We also talk about other taboo topics or other topics that people refuse to talk about. For example, women's rights. And also about the recent Unduk Nadal case, sexual harassment case. We actually talk about this stuff in our campaigns, in our social media, because we want to engage with youths. We want them to actually have this power to speak up and to find a safe space to actually speak about these issues. So going forward, this is our first main event that we did with UndiSabah, which is a panel discussion on Sabah's political direction. It's very, very interesting because UndiSabah is actually one of the first youth organization that actually speaks about politics, actually encourages youth to speak about politics in Sabah. And when we started UndiSabah, we had quite a, I didn't know how well people would perceive it, how well people would actually take it. It was very sudden, and during this panel discussion, the first panel discussion that we had over 10,000 or 20,000 youths that actually watch us online via Facebook, and we actually did this physical as well, especially since the SOP was quite tight, so we only limited to around 50 people to attend our physical event. And it was quite interesting because we invite people from all political directions. There was this one session where we actually invite youths that are contesting in the previous Sabah State election to come to our session to actually talk in a more proper manner, so that other people can hear about how they're speaking, what their manifestos are about, and to make them more aware of about how they are as a person. And another thing that is very, very interesting that we also did was Dun Belia Sabah. So what Dun Belia Sabah is actually we invited over, I think it was 30 or 33 youths all around Sabah to engage in a proper discourse, a proper discourse in a way. So this was the time when one of the taboo topics actually in Sabah as well is about the statelessness issue. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. But then in our Dun Belia Sabah, our topic was actually about statelessness. And we were quite shocked because we received, because we can only take around 30 people that time, but we received over 150 applications. And it shows that people actually want to talk. The youth in Sabah actually want to talk about these issues, and they want to find people, like-minded people, to talk about these issues, to actually champion the same cause. So this was quite an interesting event as well. And before I end my sharing session for today, another thing that I wanted to show is this was my first time voting 2 years ago. I had that crazy hair time. This is my first time voting, and why this was a very, very memorable thing for me is because my father actually didn't want to vote. He didn't want to go to vote because he was very, very angry at that time about how it's during a pandemic and people would have to go out to vote. But then I managed to convince my father to go and vote. And it's like a twist of events lah. My father used to be the one to actually impose certain restrictions towards me and to tell me what to do. And then now, as a youth, I'm able to actually convince my father to go out and vote for me. I mean, I didn't convince him to vote which party. I didn't know it's his right to vote for any party. But just for the fact that he was he was excited enough, and he was passionate enough to actually come to me to vote, because we vote at the same area, which is just right next to our house. So it was really, really something. I really felt it was sort of like a bonding moment between me and my dad to go vote. It's weird, but it's nice. But that's all for my presentation today. I hope you really like this sharing, and please do ask questions if you guys have anything. Thank you, and kotohwadan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shaan, for sharing your stories. I think it's really, really important that amongst the sea of presentations and sharing stories, that we also have one that showcases from the East Malaysian perspective as well. So on that note, we're going to move on to some questions. So the first one is that activism and advocacy in Malaysia is unfortunately, very clan-centric in Malaysia. So what are your thoughts on this, and how can East Malaysians increase East Malaysian representation in advocacy?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I think one important thing is for East Malaysians to be proud of their roots, proud of where they come from. I think when you're really proud about your culture and about your indigenous upbringing, that you actually, in a way, you don't realize that you're actually bringing this to the scene in activism. And I think as much as we try to speak up, as much as East Malaysians try to speak up about our representation, I also think it's important for other NGOs out there, especially those centered in KL or in Selangor, in the say, to actually put it into their mind that East Malaysian, you need to have East Malaysian representative when making certain decisions, because we have a unique lens to look upon. And I think I feel like, especially when it comes towards youth movements as well, sometimes we don't realize that we tend to diminish these voices. And I think it's important to actually have at least one representative in your community, in your organization, to actually speak about this stuff.
That's awesome. I think definitely it is really about collaborating then, you would say, collaborating with East and West Malaysians together on a singular platform. I think that's really stellar advice. So for those who have organizations here, if you don't have any East Malaysians in your team, you guys might want to look into diversity in your team and proper representation. So thanks so much, Shaan. I think the next question, I want to talk a little bit about the elections actually, right? So we're expecting the elections to come about this year. As East Malaysians and as someone who also co-founded a platform for East Malaysians, specifically Sabahans, what can people that are advocates in Sabah do to empower Sabahan youths in the upcoming election?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Rifqi. I think one thing is, this is a challenge that actually we face in UndiSabah, is because mainly in UndiSabah itself, we focus more on digital in a way that we post about infographics, we do webinars, and this can only reach towards a certain limit, because there are people that in the interior parts of Sabah and Sarawak, and also in Semenanjung Malaysia as well, that don't have access towards internet, and that's really a problem that we have to face. But I think like what other Sabahans, especially if you're an individual, that you can do is just to speak about it. It's just to try to break this silence, and just you go against the social norms and speak to your friends, to your family, and whenever, let's say, your parents or let's say your aunties, if they were to speak badly about something, let's say they were to speak, let's say, because just a story, when I wanted to vote, when I was going to vote, right? So one of my aunt actually told me to vote for another person just because solely that he was a cousin. Vote for him because he's your cousin and he could give you contracts. I'm like, what? So, a normal person, and a normal me 5 years ago, I would be like, oh, okay. But then I was actually very, very triggered by it. So I actually spoke out that it's not a right thing to do. You vote for a person because you want them to represent your community as a whole, and not only you as a person, because you might benefit from it, but then other people might not benefit from it, and your children might not benefit from it in the future. So I think, just start by speaking out, especially youths out there. Don't be afraid to speak out. I mean, speak out in a respectful manner. And I think it's important to have difficult conversations. Usually we try to run away from difficult conversations, but it's something that I feel like it needs to be done.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's like really, really great advice actually from Shaan. And essentially it's about disrupting the status quo. And to all the other young advocates that might be watching, Shaan is known to disrupt the status quo within Sabah, especially having very difficult conversations in it. So I hope you learned a thing or two from Shaan. Adriana, do you have any thoughts on this?
For me personally, I don't think I have any more that I can add, but we have a couple more questions in the chat for Shaan and the other speakers.
Yeah. So should we move on to the next Q&A session with everyone then?
Yes, I think that works.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So now we're going to move on to our Q&A session with the rest of the speakers that have spoken today. So we have Rozella, we have Shaan, and we also have Anas. So we do have a list of questions here from the audience. So maybe Adriana, you want to kickstart this?
All right, sure. I think there was a couple of questions for Rozella. First one, it's important to teach young people to embrace themselves, but it is equally important to teach kids to be kind, to not bully others, and be judgmental. When you talk to students, what is your message to the main kids in school?
Well, I think the rule of thumb is like you have to ask why are you bullying other people, and most of the time it's because we're insecure about ourselves as well. You know, we want to hurt other people because we don't feel like we're good enough, right? So we make other people feel small so we can amplify and make us feel bigger. So it's really about having a conversation with perhaps both parties coming together, sitting down and saying, hey, what's actually going on inside? Like, why are you actually doing this to other people? What are the underlying issues? What are the root causes that are making you mean? Because none of us are actually born mean, right?
Yeah.
We learn it from somewhere. We learn it from maybe our environments, our home, depending on where we grew up with, in our community. And sometimes we lash out because it's our defense mechanism. We're trying to protect ourselves from something as well. So it's really about going deeper. And, you know, unfortunately, when it comes to these issues, there's no easy one-fit-all solution or quick cut, quick fix solution. It's really about understanding yourself deeper, what the issue is, and trying to learn from that and grow from that. Yeah, it's a long process, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so I just want to follow up on the question and what you said earlier on people sort of projecting the insecurities, right? Do you believe that this issue of discriminating individuals solely based on their looks is systemic in nature?
Definitely. I mean, it's been, instilled in us for centuries, right? It's what we see in media. It's what is promoted. Like, if you look back, especially the history of women, particularly, right? Me being a woman myself, what was our ancestors back in the day, women didn't have rights to do anything. They couldn't do anything, right? And so what was your worth? Your only job was to actually be a wife, right? To be, so you're presented in that way. How do you make yourself attractive, right? As a partner, it's to present yourself in a certain way. So there's a lot of emphasis on the way women look because that was the role that we had to play to make you more attractive to a suitor, especially a good suitor. You had to look a certain way. You had to be a certain kind of person, right? But things have changed, but still, we somehow still have that mentality from way back when. You can just watch Mulan, for example, and you can see it there, right? It's really apparent, that we have to fit into this certain role to be attractive, to be loved, to be needed, to be wanted, to be worthy. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think we've sort of grown. Well, at least I hope so. We've grown past that, the need to be dependent on individuals and all these very superficial factors. But again, I think as you mentioned, it's still a work in progress in society. But nonetheless, thank you so much for sharing your answers with us. Adriana?
I think there's like 2 more questions for Rozella that were earlier during her session. So one of the questions was someone being insecure when they're surrounded by people who are high class. And another question is regarding someone who they want to share stuff with family and friends, but they feel like their family and friends aren't paying attention to them or don't want to hear what they have to say. Do you have anything to comment on that?
I think let's answer one by one. I think the first question about not thinking that you're good enough because of other people are of higher class, or you think that, they're richer, prettier, whatever it is, right? I think it's really about, if you're not ready to be around that group of people, then maybe remove yourself first and find a group of people that you're comfortable with. Because sometimes, forcing yourself into a situation that really makes you uncomfortable and amplifies your insecurity, makes it worse for you, right? So if that's the case, remove yourself first, find a different avenue, a different outlet, a different group that makes you feel comfortable and safe. But if it's really just about, you wanting to compete with people, I think it's really understanding that, we all have different qualities, different things that we bring to the table. So trying to find complementary ways with each other and seeing how we can, collaborate and work together instead of comparing with one another. And I think there was an early question by Lisa as well about being insecure and not being able to speak English well, right? And going to the workforce, being insecure about that. I think if I could just give my 2 cents on that as well. Number one, it's maybe if that is not the direction that you want to go to and you think it's not important, then maybe find a different company, a more niche company that is, like a Chinese company, or, something that's more suitable to, that you're more comfortable with, right? That you can thrive in, right? Instead of forcing yourself to be something that you're not, someone that you're not. But number two, if you think it really is important to you, then you have to do the work, right? Because none of us got to where we are today. None of us became fluent or good in whatever skills that we have today without actually doing hard work behind the scenes, right? What you see right now when the camera is on and social media is on is just like a small percentage, but you don't see all the back work that we've been doing for years, for example, right? So if it's important to you, then practice and learn, take your time to develop a skill, whatever it is, be it language, be it, anything at all. And I think the question about not knowing how to speak to people, especially families and friends. So I kind of have a rule of thumb for myself. If it's some people, no matter what you say to them, they just block you out, right? Because we do live in that culture, unfortunately, that's like to sweep things under the rug. Don't talk about her feelings, right? We bottle everything up most of the time. If you come from that kind of family, that kind of background, I get it. I was there too. So it's really about finding people who make you feel safe enough to be yourself and to be vulnerable. So if I love Dr. Brene Brown. So she's an author that I really love. And she has this concept of like having marble jar friends. So imagine a marble, like a jar, right? If people are kind to you and they support you, they don't, dismiss you when you open up to them, you put marbles in the jar, right? And then you build up their jar. So when they are actually mean to you, or they just push you aside, just get over it, why are you making such a big deal? Then you take marbles out. So it's finding people who actually have jars that are full of marbles that you can trust. Right. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's also about, she also says this other thing. If you have an open wound, which is like still bleeding and still hurting, something that is really sensitive to you right now, reserve it for people who are your marble jar friends, or if you're still working through it yourself, keep it to yourself first. But if your wounds have healed and it's like scars now, and you're a little bit braver about talking about it, right? Because whatever people's reaction is, you kind of have that shield already, or you're kind of comfortable in your story already, then go ahead and talk about it, right? Like if you asked me to talk about my problem with addiction 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to, right? Because it was still a wound, it was still bleeding. But today, it really isn't something that bothers me. So I open up about it and share my story because I know that other people are going through it as well. But if people say something negative to me, I know that, it doesn't really hurt me anymore. Yeah, because it's already a scar. So if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your experience. I think it's really important as young individuals that we are open up to those advices at such a young age. given the fact that we're very impressionable and often we view the world based on the perception of others than ourselves. So thank you, Rozella. And I think as a kid, I would have found that really, really inspiring. So a bit sad that I'm 20 now, that I'm only hearing that now, but all good. All right, so the next question, which is to all panelists here, because everyone here actually does social work, is as a youth who is interested in pursuing social work, how can I make my work financially sustainable? It is my dream tool on social justice, but I still need advice like how to pay rent, you know. So what's your advice on this? Maybe we can start off with Shaan.
Yeah, sure. I don't really have much experience in that say because before this Project CAD and UndiSabah, we mainly go with grants. If you know grants, actually you have a limit of time when it actually depletes out and you have to find another grant as well when it comes to its financial. But for UndiSabah and Project CAD, what we do is we mainly have volunteers and we try to compensate as much as we could to them when grants actually come towards us. And we also receive donations from people that actually believe in our cause. And I think, especially as a youth, because I started Project CAD back when I was 18 and I was still in uni back then. And I was grateful enough that I actually have allowance from my scholarship to actually sustain myself at the same time I'm doing this social work at the other end. And I think that's something I don't really have much experience in when it comes towards financial and how to actually sustain your NGO or your social work in terms of financially. But I think maybe other panelists could chip in as well.
Cool. Anas?
I guess on a more individual basis, it might be a good idea to focus more on your personal, to settle your personal finance part first, to place priority on that, because I mean, it's very difficult to do advocacy, to do organizing if you're struggling to put food on table, right? If you're struggling to like pay rent on time. So again, like it is a matter of like picking your fights and being aware of your, what do you call it, your limitations really, and it's okay, like it's a completely normal thing. Like everyone has to eat, everyone has to have roof over their heads, and don't feel pressured to sort of there's this whole martyrdom thing when it comes to activism, right? Where we have this view that, oh, we need to sacrifice this and that, but so like sometimes things do require sacrifice, but like there are certain things that you should never give away, and these are one of the things. So you can try to find the option of like where your activism is your line of work, but sometimes that's just not possible. So then you might have to like separate time between the two activities. That's just my personal advice.
Awesome. Thanks, Anas. How about you, Rozella?
I think well, I guess there's a couple of ways you can approach it. Number one is activism and advocacy doesn't have to be full-time, right? You can still do it on the side. It doesn't have to be your job. So if you can't do it full-time because of financial means, have a full-time job and do this on the side, during the weekends when you have free time, right? And that doesn't make you any less of an activist or an advocate, right? That doesn't make you like, oh, I'm not doing as much as other people. It doesn't matter, right? Everyone has different capabilities and different flexibility in terms of that. And number two, I think there are a lot of ways that you can generate income nowadays. Freelancing is great. There are a lot of websites where you can do writing or I don't know, photography, whatever it is, right? Like I'm a freelancer as well. I do script writing, I do writing, I do so many different things because I want to sustain myself and do this as well. And there's no shame in that, right? So you can do full-time or not, or you can explore and do freelancing. And I think also understanding that your journey at different points is going to be different. It might be hard in the beginning, right? You're struggling, you're still trying to find your footing, especially if you are starting your own organization or platform, for example. But as you change, there are opportunities to make money in different ways. Like for me, I work with a lot of corporate companies right now. But 5 years ago, when I first started, obviously no one knew who I was. I didn't have that opportunity. But nowadays, I get to work with corporate companies and create programs for their staff, or be a part of campaigns, or help them create inclusive campaigns for their companies, right, for their brands. So it's really looking at it step by step and not thinking, oh, I have to get there straight away, understanding that, it's a journey and it's a process, and wherever you are, whatever you decide, it's still okay.
Yeah, I think this conversation can sort of become quite bleak because unfortunately, activism does not pay, or doesn't pay as well. My mentor used to tell me in advocacy, who is no longer my mentor, but she used to tell me that the work that advocates do is something that is very, very valuable to society. But unfortunately, your work can be valuable, but that does not mean that you would be compensated for that value. And that's sort of the unfortunate reality of advocacy. But I also want to highlight that there are a lot of social enterprises and NGOs that have financial capacities that are actually actively hiring all the time. For example, Teach for Malaysia, who fights for education equity. You also have different organizations like Swaram, who's always looking for people to run their programs and things like that. So as an advocate myself, my advice would definitely be, if you do want to sustain yourself and also work in the line of advocacy, you can go ahead and try all these different roles that are opening up, so that you can, explore the world of activism as well. But I think, moreover, it's actually very difficult to start up an NGO that has a lot of financial means. As Shaan mentioned, it comes up with a lot of grants. And as Rozella mentioned also, it really comes with doing so many different things at once in order to sort of just sustain. So I guess one great advice that I have, is sort of insider that I know, is that you can start building a track record of, having different programs and projects that you're embarking on your own. And soon you can approach corporate companies and run their corporate social responsibility programs for them. So that will make you the program vendor. So you sort of just do the advocacy work for other people, and that would fund your work. Yeah. So I hope that advice helps. Adriana, do you have any thoughts?
On this particular issue, I don't think really. I think when I was younger, I think I also thought about this, because I was like, oh, I want to do charity work, but giving to others doesn't necessarily pay you. So I think it's fine. It's completely fine to have to settle yourself first, to do what you need to do to make yourself financially stable. And then you can join all these activities and you can do all these things, because you can't give to others if you're not feeding yourself or taking care of yourself too. So it's completely okay to take it step by step in terms of this journey. If no one else has anything to add, we have another question for everyone. It's from Lisa. What do you guys think the youth can do to upgrade or upskill ourselves? What important skills are needed for 2022, or where can they get those skills?
Anyone can start first, really.
Yeah. Maybe Rozella?
I think for me, at the end of the day, I think communication is probably one of the most important skills that you can have, because it can help open doors, it can help create opportunities. It can help you collaborate with different people, understand people better, so communication for me would be like the top skill to learn. Yeah. And where you can get it, there's a lot of free programs online. If you just Google search, right, there are a lot of free programs that you can find. Or I'm sure like in your communities, there are also institutions that actually have programs that you can join. So communication, public speaking, those are things that are really, really helpful, especially if you're going to advocacy and activism, and maybe writing as well. Yeah.
What about Shaan and Anas?
Yeah, I actually echo what Rozella mentioned. I think like soft skills is very important. I mean, like growing up, because last time I didn't have internet in my house. So what I did was, you know how when you watch movies and like, you know, TV shows on your TV, on Astro, you can have those subtitles down there. I actually have those subtitles down there and I learned English through that. Yeah, I really believe that effective communication is really important. Also, when it comes to when you're dealing with people, you want to actually present the best of yourself. And it only comes when people can understand what you're talking about. And of course, like, you know, there's going to be some mistakes here and there, but I think it's a learning process to actually learn to speak effectively. I mean, I'm still learning up till this day as well. And I feel like, you know, you can have a lot, like Rozella mentioned, there's a lot of things online that you can learn from. There's on YouTube. And sometimes I would actually watch random TED Talks, and that really helps me in actually trying to formulate my thoughts and in the way to actually present to other people as well.
How about you, Anas?
Yeah, definitely. I echo what Rozella and Shaan has said. Communication is very important. In fact, in this line of work, you'll find yourself doing that quite a lot because ultimately you're dealing with, I guess, you know, advocacy means just speaking to people, and like it's a skill that's you'll find very valuable if you learn it lah. And then otherwise it's also a sort of skill that you also gain from experience. So I mean, you can go to all these programs and whatnot, but then it still comes to a point where you have to put it into practice. And a lot of times, like, you know, the sort of knowledge you gain and you try to put into practice, you'll find that it's a very different context. You're working in a very different context. So my other advice is like, yeah, sure, go learn. That's very, very much needed. But secondly, start putting it into practice lah.
Yeah, I think that's supremely important as well. As much as you can learn all the theories and modes of communication, in the end is really about applying that and experiencing that for yourself. And I think, like, especially with conflict, you really do not deal with conflict unless you have to deal with conflict. And I think in advocacy, conflict is probably the biggest thing that can happen, and worst thing that can happen too. So thanks, Anna, for sharing. Okay, so I think we have enough time for one more question for everyone. So we actually have a few questions here. Maybe I'll let Adriana pick.
Oh, we have we have quite a few questions. Maybe we'll go with, we have a question for both Shaan and Anas. Have your NGO or movement received criticism before, and how did you handle it? And upon reflection, if there is anything that you would have done differently? I guess this is just for people who want to start this journey.
Yeah, maybe I can go first. I think yes, we do. We receive. I mean, if you know UndiSabah, we received a lot of criticism before, especially when we started UndiSabah. A lot of people, especially from the community, when it comes to it, especially from this conservative community, they don't really like us encouraging you to speak out. We received a lot of criticism up to a point that someone actually created a Twitter account that actually on behalf of our name to actually, like, you know, throw shade on us in that way. But you know, people say, you know, you know you're doing the right thing when there are people against you. So how we actually deal with this is how we actually deal with this is you have to understand that in this line of work, no matter how hard you want to, you want to go against them, go against these people. It's also the image. You're also representing the image of your NGO as well. And what we do is we would usually, if it's just like a personal attack, or if it's a attack towards a personal individual in our organization, we would ask that person to actually deal with it without actually causing the harm of of the people inside and the community. I mean, and the NGO as a whole. And what we always do is we would always discuss about we would take all our members in and we would discuss about our future headings, and if everyone agrees with it, and whenever criticism comes, we'll come as a group to actually release a statement as well. And I think also people were against us because we, like in UndiSabah, we have members from a lot of different political parties. We're not only inclined towards one. And a lot of people actually mentioned that if let's say we were to invite this particular speaker from one, let's say from a party, and they would say, oh, you're pro this party. Then we invite another speaker from this party. They're like, oh, you're pro this party. And we're trying to actually prove to people that, we're not pro to anyone. So we actually invite all of them to actually speak up on a single forum to show that, okay, we're actually giving people a chance to speak from other party as well. And with that, what makes, one thing that actually, the outcome of that is politicians actually come to us, which is very, very funny, because before this, we actually go towards politicians to ask them to be on a platform. But then because when we invite other people, when we invite other political parties to be on a platform, and then the political party will be like, hey, why didn't you invite me? Like, can I be on your platform? So we're like, oh, okay, sure. But there's a line, no, there's no line now, but like, okay, maybe the next one, and people start to engage with us. And then once we actually show this towards the people, the public, that we're engaging people from all different sides, that actually helps us in handling our criticism. And if one thing that I could take away if I were to turn back time, especially with my NGO as well, is to actually think your words truly before addressing. I used to be very, when people, let's say, were to talk to me in public, and then they were like very, very rude to me. Like, let's say, like talking about politics, I would directly like, oh, you know what, blah, 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 those like cursing words coming out and all those stuff. I think if I were to turn back time, I would actually deal with it in a more professional manner, because I should understand by then that I also represent the organization that I am in. And I think it's really important to actually be a very, very constructive person when dealing with criticism.
That's pretty good advice, to be honest. Shaan, how old are you this year?
I'm 23.
23. So that's advice from a 23-year-old telling you to be constructive. All right, how about the rest? What are your thoughts on this topic?
MS definitely has received criticism, and really that's the nature of disruption. We're disrupting something, and that means you're going to ruffle a few feathers. So it's really just a question of assessing, what the criticisms are they fair criticisms and whatnot. And more importantly, you want to engage these criticisms in a calm and collected manner, because it's very easy to get caught up with all these criticisms and and sort of lose the bigger picture. A lot of what has been said by Shaan earlier kind of applies here as well, and that kind of invites more trouble than it's worth. So you don't want that lah. So like it's natural, it's gonna happen, and so like the best you can do is just approach it in a calm and collected manner, and then and yeah, that's it. that's the best advice I can give.
I think it's great advice. I think all of us, if you're working in activism or you're advocating for anything, you will encounter critics just because you might be saying things that aren't within the norm. But if you, after assessing, if you're sure that what you're doing is right, it's for a good cause, and the criticisms are all just hate or people saying that we shouldn't be talking about this, just stand your ground. It's okay to advocate for change for good causes. I think we do have time for one more question. This is actually, so I've been seeing in the chat, there are questions talking about like how to improve speech, how to improve talking. To the speakers here, in your opinion, do you think having a non-Western or English sounding accent will hinder one's journey in activism or in any field?
No, not really. It's never, I don't know, for me personally, it's never affected anything. And in fact, a lot of times, if you're working here, you find yourself needing to be able to speak other languages than English. That's probably a more valuable skill. Being able to speak fluently in your native tongue, for an example, is probably something people look for.
Yeah. How about Shaan and like Rozella? I think Shaan specifically might have some thoughts on this because I think by virtue of being Sabahan, always fighting to include that dialect within conversation is really important, right?
Yeah.
Yes. What are your thoughts?
To be honest, I think it's beautiful. I think it's very beautiful when you have a different accent when speaking English. People always say I have an accent when I speak English. I don't know what accent it is, but maybe I have. But before this, I used to try to hide my best, to try to fit into the norm, to actually speak English in a certain accent. But then going towards the years that I actually learn about my roots, I'm actually very, very proud of it because you're one of the few people that actually has this accent. So why not, show it off? In a way, if people can still understand you, that's the important thing of communication. If at the end of the day, the other party understands you, then that's your job has been fulfilled, and they understand you in an accent that is actually unique towards yours. And you can actually use this to actually share about your culture as well, and people could actually learn more about you. And sometimes it could be a conversation starter. And I feel that that's an opportunity to look upon. And I feel that having an accent is very beautiful.
I love that. How about you, Rozella? Have you ever faced any challenges or obstacles? I don't think it has to be just for accent, maybe just for who you are as an individual.
I'm from Sabah too. So Shaan and I have known each other for a while. But yeah, I don't have as strong as an accent. But I think it's really, the world is so diverse. Why are we trying to be someone else, right? Like I speak the way I do because of the education that I had, or because of the household that I grew up in. It's a reflection of who I am, my background, my history, right? So, and everyone's different. And why are we comparing with each other? There's no, who's to say that, because you have an accent, your English is worse than mine, or you're, I don't know, not as proficient as I am, right? Like less of a communicator. It's not, right? Like Shaan said, as long as you are speaking from the heart, being honest, and people can actually understand you, that's the most important thing, right? And if you can't understand each other verbally, write it down. There's Google Translate. There's so many other for us to communicate nowadays, right? So it doesn't really have to boil. Yeah. Who cares about your accent? Like that's just like 1% of who you are, it's minor detail.
And yeah, I think it's really great that we've sort of passed the time, like the stages whereby people will care about the accent you had as an individual. And I'm really happy to have I think half this panel here is Malaysians, so I'm very happy for that as well. I'm from Sarawak as well, so that's really cool to see so many of you guys here. Okay, cool. So I think we are just on time at 12:10 to end up the session. So if you have any other questions, of course, you can reach out to these individuals through social media, I believe. You can, if you have any questions for Mrs. Solidariti, UndiSabah, or Rozella, just go ahead and DM them on Twitter or Instagram, and within their own capacity, they will attend to you. Right, cool. So I think that's it, Adriana. We can move on to the MC.
Yep, we can. Thank you,
right.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. So, wow, that was actually an amazingly good session. So impressive and very inspiring. I was actually glued to my chair throughout the session. There's just so many things that we all can learn from our speakers. Really good session. Thank you once again, everyone, and special thanks to the speakers and moderators. We will be having a short break shortly. Remember, do join us back at 2 p.m. for the workshop on measuring the impact of your social justice advocacy campaign by Mr. Rizal Roshan. The workshop is very good. So Rizal Roshan is the Assistant Vice President and Impact Development in Impact Malaysia. By the way, we have a survey for you to fill up. The link is shared in the chat. We hope that you will help us to improve our sessions by filling up the survey form. Tell us what you want to hear more in the future. And if you would like to keep updated about the events organized by MIDP, do follow their social media at MIDP Today on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So see you again later, guys, at 2 p.m. Bye-bye.